Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Anthropology lecture series. Today we'll see Paleolithic climate. This was a question asked in UPSC Civil Services Mains 2023 examination. So the picture that you see here is a general illustration of Paleolithic climate. So before we delve into Paleolithic climate, let's see the geological timescale. So the entire geological timescale is divided into different eras, and the current era that we live in is called Cenozoic era. Era is Cenozoic era. And this era is further divided into periods. And the important periods that is our subject matter is tertiary period and quaternary period. This tertiary period began around 56 million years ago, and quaternary period began around 2.58 million years ago from the present time period. And in quaternary period is very important for us because this is the age, this is the time period where human evolution took place, where climate, there was drastic change in climate. And this is the area where Paleolithic culture comes in. This quaternary phase is further divided into Pleistocene and Holocene. These are two epochs, and Holocene is the current epoch that we live in. In Pleistocene epoch, there was the Paleolithic culture. So this Pleistocene epoch was around 1.65 million years ago. So those are the different periods and their time scale. Now let's see the climatic conditions or the environmental features of these periods. So the tertiary period, by the end of tertiary period, what we can see is in the temperate regions. These are called the temperate regions, as we all know. These are the temperate regions. Now in these regions, when it was towards the end of tertiary period, there was gradual cooling down of Earth. Gradual cooling, which meant the temperate regions was further southward. It was nearer to the equator. In the present era, what we can see is this equator region is is having a warm climatic condition. But back in tertiary period, towards the end of tertiary period, what we could see was these regions experienced cool temperatures. So these areas had experienced cooler temperatures. So same is the case with higher altitudes as well. This is a hill, and towards the higher altitudes, say for example, if you go to Himalayas, towards the higher altitudes there will be snow line. Snow covered regions are called snow line, which is not easily melted like the low lying areas. So back in tertiary period, towards the end of tertiary period, these snow lines moved southwards. The general meaning of this is that the entire Earth experienced some kind of cool temperature throughout the temperate zones and near to the areas of tropical zones. So after tertiary period, quaternary period comes, and in the quaternary period, as we saw earlier, there is Pleistocene and our Holocene period. So that was about the spatial distribution of tertiary periods climatic conditions. Now we'll see the spatial distribution of Pleistocene epoch's climatic conditions. So this was a question that was actually asked in our exam. So during Pleistocene epoch, there were four stages, that is the four glacial stages. And in between these four glacial stages, there were interglacial stages. So there was glacial stages and interglacial stages. Both these glacial and interglacial stages are periods of cool temperatures. There is general temperature is relatively low. So even when it comes to interglacial period as well, the temperature is cool. It's not the case that during glacial it's cooler and in interglacial it's warmer. It's just relatively warmer than the glacial period. Generally, all throughout, this is called the ice age, and all throughout the temperature remains cooler than what we see today, that what we see in the Holocene period. So this glacial and interglacial period, as I told earlier, there are four stages of glacial period, and this was studied by Peng and Bruckner in 1909. So they gave a fourfold classification, and this classification is based on the alpine characteristics on Alps. Here we have the Alps. And based on the names are derived from the river, small streams that flows through Alps. So the four interglacial periods are Gunz, Mindel, Riss, and Wurm. So these are the glacial periods. And all these glacial periods have a intermediate interglacial periods. And the interglacial period is, first interglacial is Gunz, Mindel. That is the intervening period between Gunz and Mindel. Next is the Mindel Riss interglacial period. And the last interglacial period is the Riss Wurm interglacial period. So according to studies, this first two glacial periods were more intense than the other one. So after this, we have the Holocene period. So that was the glacial and interglacial period. So this glacial and interglacial period took place in the temperate regions. Now in the tropical regions, it was pluviation and interpluviation. So pluviation and interpluviation and interpluviation. So pluviation is something related to rain. So pluviation is a phase of wet temperature, and interpluviation was a phase of relatively drier temperature. So this was found mostly in the African region. So based on the African nomenclature, this pluviation, interpluviation periods are also divided into four. So the first phase is Kajiran. Second is Kanjiran. Third is Camasian. And fourth fluid period is the Gambian. So similar to the glaciation, interglaciation period, in pluviation also the intermediate period is called the interpluviation period, and this can be termed as Kagiran, Kanjiran, interpluviation, Kanyiran, Camasian, interpluviation, and Camasian, Gambian, interpluviation. These are dry temperature time period of Pleistocene epoch. So that is the general climatic region of the world. Now let's see how this was evident in India, how India's climate regime was during the Pleistocene epoch. So here we know India is unique, and we can see both these climatic conditions, both the glacial phases and the pluvial phases in Indian subcontinent. So India can be divided into three zones for this. One is the Himalayan zone, the other is the Indo-Gangetic plain, and the third one is the Deccan zone. So in each these zones, there are different climatic conditions. So in the Himalayan region, we have our glaciation and interglaciation phases. In Deccan region, we have pluviation and interpluviation phases. And because of this variation, our culture, Paleolithic culture, is also greatly varied in both northern part of India and the southern part of India. Now, majorly in the Himalayan part, glaciation was observed. In the Indo-Gangetic plain and in this Pakistan and Potwar region, it was interglaciation phases. Now, when it comes to glaciation, there are different sub-regions and regions. There are regions called glaciated places. Glaciated places are regions where there are glaciers. So currently we can see glaciers in the Antarctic region, Arctic region, but during the Pleistocene epoch and Pleistocene and Tertiary Quaternary periods, what we could see was glacial regions where they are far beyond than what we can see today. That is, in the temperate regions also there were presence of glaciers. So these regions are termed as glaciated regions. The next region is periglaciated region. Peri is periphery. So in the periphery of the glaciated region, the region was called periglaciated. That is, the region will not have glaciers, but then the region is influenced by the climate of glaciated regions. Then the third region is called the aglaciated regions. In this aglaciated regions, there is no influence of glaciers or the glacier region. So human settlement was largely concentrated in this periglaciated and aglaciated regions, and near in the glaciated zone, human settlement was minimal or was absent. That is what we can see from the fossil remains and finds. So that was the Paleolithic environment of India. Now let's see some Paleolithic sites so that we can further understand how Paleolithic culture was spread out in India. So the Paleolithic sites in India are, first we have the Swan Valley, which is part of Pakistan as well. The Swan Valley was studied by Detera and Patterson in 1939. So it was this Detera and Patterson who gave the fourfold classification of glacial classification of Indian Paleolithic climate, and with their findings from the Swan Valley, terraces of the Swan Valley. Now, other sites, this is a lower Paleolithic site. Then we have Belen Valley, which is in Uttar Pradesh. There are deposits in Shivalik ranges as well. Then we have the Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh, which have yielded lower Paleolithic, middle Paleolithic, upper Paleolithic, and even the Mesolithic paintings. Then, when it comes to south, we have in the Andhra Pradesh, we have Kurnool. Muchatla Chintamani Gavi is a place of upper Paleolithic find. From here, we have got bone tools. Then in Karnataka, we have Hansgi. Then from Kerala, we have Kasargod. This belongs to the lower Paleolithic period. So there are more sites. Then there is the Narmada. That is the Narmada Valley. From there we got the remains of Narmada man, which is believed to be a Homo erectus. So these are some of the places or excavation zones of Paleolithic culture. So Paleolithic culture was characterized by use of choppers, chopping tools, and there was use of bone tools as well. So this is the general idea of Paleolithic culture. So that's all for today's lecture. Hope you liked this video. We'll meet again in another video.